Evan is the Senior Football Columnist for RotoWorld, and RotoWorld is powered by NBC Sports. How are you today, Evan?
Nabaté, man, I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing well, thank you. I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking, and it is always an honor to have you on the show, my man. And wow, so what you been up to? How's things going at RotoWorld?
Been going real well, man. I mean, news picks up big time during training camp. I'm excited to see some actual football. I mean, I was super excited just to watch the Hall of Fame game. We finally get to see some football,
Yes.
Football is coming, on Saturdays, this Thursday, Fridays, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, there's at least one game every single night. So I'm really excited about that.
Absolutely, and it's always good for those doing position battles and everything like that. I mean, that's really big. The sixth rounders, the fifth rounders, the sixth round picks, seventh round picks that can end up having a major role on their teams.
Absolutely, and one of the ones to watch for this weekend in particular is going to be Jake Locker versus Matt Hasselbeck, and I think we might talk about Jake Locker in a little bit. But,
oh, yes.
That one's going to, get started right away, and the first game can have a big impact on those position battles. Look at what happened the other night between Kevin Kolb and John Skelton. I mean, Kolb went out there and he looked terrible. Skelton looked composed. Skelton took a leg up in that position battle in the first preseason game. He's got a leg up. We'll see what happens between Hasselbeck and Locker this weekend.
That's right, and Skelton, we're here based in Manhattan. Skelton is a local guy. Fordham, went to Fordham up in the Bronx. Yes, indeed. So now, without further ado, we're going to get to what we're doing for the show. This is our 2012 Fantasy Football Preview. As we all know, the fantasy football industry is booming. It's the second biggest business on the internet, and it's amazing. Pretty much pornography is first and fantasy football second. That's how great fantasy football is, for the general public. But we're going to talk about, we're going to have different positions. We're going to pick, Evan picked 3 guaranteed producers. That's players that are guaranteed to be able to reach their average draft position, ADP, meaning when they're drafted high, they're able to produce at that level. Then you have breakout stars and or sleepers, meaning players that are going to end up to be possible first, second round picks in next year's fantasy football drafts. And then you have the disappointments, the players that start off with a high ADP, average draft rating, and average draft position, and then they go downhill during the season. So without further ado, we're going to get to the quarterback position. And Evan, feel free to take it away. We have our guaranteed producers, Aaron Rodgers, of course, Green Bay.
Yeah, and, he does everything well. I mean, he can throw the football down the field. He's really athletic. Something that gives him a little bit of a leg up on Tom Brady and Drew Brees is that Aaron Rodgers produces with his legs. So not only does he give you the same kind of passing stats or even better passing stats than Tom Brady and Drew Brees do, Aaron Rodgers puts points on the board with rushing yards and rushing TDs. So he's locked in as a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I think that he's probably the safest pick out of everybody because that offense just throws the football so much. And I think that if there is a quarterback that you're willing to take in the first round of a fantasy draft, it's Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, indeed, of course. And then you have, of course, Tom Brady and Drew Brees. I mean, I have a question about Drew Brees real quickly. Do you think that, obviously he's not going to repeat the record-breaking numbers that he had last year, but don't you think with Sean Payton being suspended for the full season, do you think Brees can be able to be at a high level? Because I personally don't see Brees as a top 5 quarterback by the end of the season, personally.
Okay, and there are absolutely some reasons for skepticism, but I'll tell you what. Last year, Sean Payton, remember he blew out his knee on the sideline, and I think it was week 6 last year. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the passing numbers that the Saints were putting up while Sean Payton was still coaching and calling the plays, they got even better when Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator, took over the offensive play calling duties. And I think that is a reason for, confidence in Drew Brees, that he's not suddenly going to take a big step back. Pete Carmichael is going to be an NFL head coach sooner rather than later. I think that the Saints are going to end up being in pretty good hands.
Okay, but losing their guard as well, their all-pro guard, Carl Nix, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think it's more of a concern for the running game, really. They replaced him with a heck of a player, Ben Grubbs.
Yes, from TB Tampa Bay, coincidentally.
Right.
Wow, no doubt. And now breakout stars. Now Cam Newton, Evan. It's interesting with Cam Newton. He was already a breakout star last year, and some people are going ahead to pick him as the #1 quarterback, and he's being picked in first rounds in many different fantasy drafts. So you have Cam Newton as a breakout star, maybe as the '1 player overall in fantasy this year?
I mean, he has that kind of ability, and people want to be conservative on him, and that's understandable. He's 23 years old. This will be his second season. If you look at his passing stats down the stretch last year, they kind of dropped. But at the same time, that's when the Panthers were playing at their highest level. When defenses were taking away the Panthers' deep passing game, the Panthers they won 4 of their last 6 games, and they played Atlanta and Detroit tough. Okay, just with defenses just selling out to take away that deep passing game. Cam Newton was killing defenses with his legs. This guy is an incredible talent who is capable of just dominating the league. I think that either this year or next year he's going to emerge as the #1 overall player in fantasy, and I can absolutely see projecting him as the #1 overall fantasy player this year. If you don't want to be, if you're not afraid to be a year too early.
Wow, and one other player to talk about, Jake Locker, Tennessee. Wow, I'm so glad that he was able his stock went back up to a top 10 pick in the 2011 NFL draft, because he always had the talent. It was a shame he got a bum rap for lack of talent at Washington around him.
Yeah, and he got a bum rap for college stats, his completion percentage and his won-loss record, and that final game against Nebraska where he really struggled in that last bowl game. But when he came off the bench last year in place of Matt Hasselbeck, he showed a lot of promising signs. I mean, first of all, the guy has an absolute cannon for an arm. I mean, he can throw rocket balls, and he can really, really run. And there was a report from NFL Network that came out that said that the Titans want Jake Locker to win that starting job. I think the Titans are going to run a pass-first offense this year, and that's going to really create a lot of opportunity for Jake Locker to beat defenses with his arm and with his legs. I think that there are some lingering accuracy concerns with him, but he has a whole lot of potential as a fantasy quarterback that you might pick to be your backup, and you end up starting him.
Interesting. And while I wanted to now talk about disappointment, Phillip Rivers, who's actually been consistent, but I still have never been crazy about his lack of, his arm strength. What makes Phillip Rivers susceptible for disappointing fantasy owners? Well,
I think that the Chargers might be changing their offensive strategy to feature Ryan Matthews this year. They have talked up Ryan Matthews as a kind of Ricky Williams type when he was leading the NFL in rushing attempts, and Norv Turner was the offensive coordinator. I think they want to heap a ton of responsibility on Ryan Matthews, and I think that they know that Phillip Rivers is showing signs of decline. Last year, he threw a ton of interceptions.
Yeah.
I went back and I studied every single one of Phillip Rivers' interceptions. I think that he is losing velocity on his passes. I think he's a player who might have peaked and might already be in a state of decline. I think the Chargers might know that, and I think they want to kind of hand the keys to the offense over to Ryan Matthews.